People across China are preparing to celebrate the Year of the Pig. It's an animal the Chinese say brings good fortune. And with the Chinese economy slowing down, the extra luck will be welcome.
Business hasn't been good. We're preparing for the Lunar New Year, but we haven't finished our collections yet, so my colleagues will be staying here instead of going home.
In the fourth quarter, GDP grew at 6.4%, down from 6.5% in the previous 3 months. Full-year growth stood at 6.6%, the slowest expansion since 1990. And in a report on Monday, the International Monetary Fund said Chinese GDP growth would slow to 6.2% this year. The IMF says global growth will fall to 3.5% in 2019, down from a forecast of 3.7% last year. That's partly due to the effects of the US-China trade war.
The bottom line is that after 2 years of solid expansion, the world economy is growing more slowly than expected, and risks are rising.
The US has imposed tariffs on $250 billion worth of Chinese goods. Beijing's retaliated with tariffs on $110 billion of American products. The government says China's inflation and budget deficit are manageable, and that gives it room to boost growth by hiking spending without overheating the economy. But some analysts say the government's main priority should be reaching a deal with the US.
If we look at the year of 2019 and look into the future, the trade friction is a very crucial variable. The agreement and framework reached between China and the US in the future decides China's economy in the global economic landscape.
The US and China agreed to a truce in their trade war back in December. But if they can't reach a deal by March, the Trump administration has promised to impose more tariffs, meaning more pain for the Chinese economy. Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
Let's get more on the story now with Hongbo in London. She's a financial economics professor at the University of London School of Oriental and African Studies. Good to have you back on the program. So we have yet another sign of a sharp slowdown in China. What, in your view, are the main reasons behind it?
Yes, I think it's mainly domestic reasons rather than the trade war for the moment. Because I think, look at the export figure just reported recently. China's export is still doing very well for the last quarter. So that means the slowdown was mainly caused by the structural problems domestically. For example, the weak consumption, weak demand, domestic demand, and I think the problems, the financing problems with respect to the private sector particularly. So we will see more negative impact maybe in the first quarter of 2019, because by then we will see more negative impact from the trade wars between the two countries.
If, as you say, China's problems stem for more structural issues rather than trade wars, do you see any signs that Beijing is looking to address those problems?
Yes, I think the government is now taking quite a few measures to deal with the slowdown problem. For example, I think if you look at the policies now, they are practicing both expansionary fiscal policies and monetary policies as well. So they decided to invest more in infrastructure investment to stimulate the growth. And in the meantime, they injected quite a lot of liquidity into the system. For example, the most recent cut in the reserve requirement ratios.
Now, let's look at the US-China trade war briefly. We know that they're holding talks in Washington at the end of the month. I'm wondering, in light of this increasing signs of a slowdown in the Chinese economy, do you think Beijing is in a weaker position when it comes to negotiating?
Yes, to me, Beijing is in a relatively weaker position as compared to the American, because I think I have to say both sides are facing increasingly greater pressure of reaching an agreement as soon as possible. However, I think Beijing because Beijing is in a weaker position, so the Chinese government is going to take a approach to compromise more than the American government. And I think, in terms of the structure reforms which are requested by the American government, it is very difficult for the Chinese government to implement everything within such a short time period.
Yes.
But I think both sides are trying to make some compromise and to reach some kind of agreement, even on some conditions.
Interesting, and we will keep an eye on those talks when they happen. Hong Bo in London, thank you as always.